As President Putin casts a long shadow over NATO's strategic calculus, the alliance has been forced to contend with internal security problems that complicate collective planning and strain trust among member states. Turkish authorities killed one suspected ISIS operative and detained more than 200 people in a major security crackdown. An operation officials say was aimed at dismantling networks and preventing attacks ahead of high-profile international gatherings. The NATO summit now faces potential jeopardy after Turkey reported it had foiled an ISIS plot, a development that raises concerns about member states' domestic vulnerabilities and could overshadow the gathering's agenda with urgent security fallout. Some commentators suggest Putin is smiling as rival capitals scramble to cover security breaches at their own meetings, arguing that Moscow benefits strategically when NATO and its partners are distracted by internal crises rather than united in confronting external threats. An ISIS suspect was killed during a police raid conducted ahead of the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey. An operation officials say was part of an intensified security sweep intended to neutralize imminent threats before world leaders arrive. Turkish police shot the man dead during the raid, the Associated Press reports, describing a violent confrontation in which officers say lethal force was used after the suspect allegedly resisted or posed an immediate danger. The incident occurred in Sazagasi, a town located roughly 100 kilometers south of the capital, a detail that local officials highlighted while stressing the operation was coordinated as part of broader counter-terror measures in the region. Authorities said the suspect was shot dead while his wife, who is suspected of having links to ISIS, was wounded and subsequently arrested, an outcome that both expanded the scope of the investigation and underscored the possibility of a wider family network. The shooting and arrests took place during sweeping raids conducted on June 23, actions that Turkish security forces described as coordinated strikes against cells and facilitators they say threatened public safety ahead of the summit. More than 200 people with suspected links to extremist groups were detained in the wider operation. A large-scale roundup officials say aims to disrupt networks, gather intelligence and reassure both domestic audiences and international partners. Some media outlets, including the Associated Press, reported that among the detained were politicians and activists, a claim that raised questions about the breadth of the crackdown and prompted scrutiny from civil society and rights groups. U.S. President Trump is expected to join other leaders from the 32-member alliance in Ankara, a high-profile attendance that Turkish authorities have cited as a reason for the stepped-up security measures and the urgency of pre-summit operations. The NATO summit, which will address issues including Iran and Ukraine, is scheduled for July 7 to 8th, a timetable organizers say leaves limited room to respond to evolving security intelligence while ensuring the safety of participating delegations. Turkey is planning strict security measures for the summit, outlining a comprehensive plan that combines increased policing, surveillance and restricted access to key venues to mitigate risk and maintain order during the high-level gathering. Planned measures reportedly include bans on demonstrations and restrictions on roads leading to airports, steps authorities say are necessary to prevent disruptions, control movement and protect visiting leaders during the summit period. In a related development, Turkish security forces detained 324 people suspected of links to the Islamic State in May, a recent mass arrest that officials cite as part of a continuing campaign to dismantle extremist networks and prevent attacks at major events. The NATO meeting will take place in the wake of a high-profile address by Vladimir Putin that directly sought to confront and exploit the alliance's anxieties. A speech observers say was timed to shape diplomatic agendas and put member states on the defensive as they prepare to coordinate policy responses. On June 23, President Putin accused NATO of preparing for war with Russia, a sharp rebuke framed to justify Moscow's own military buildup while seeking to delegitimize the alliance's exercises and posture in the eyes of both domestic and international audiences.
Today, Russian officers and soldiers are courageously and effectively performing their duties during the special military operation. They are liberating our historic lands and defending our people. I am confident that you will prove yourselves worthy of the honorable title of Russian officer and do your utmost to uphold the glorious traditions of our armed forces. I would like to emphasize in particular how important it is to continue to learn the achievements of military science and to develop professionally throughout your service. The prominent military theorist General Mikhail Dragomirov once said that a leader who is dedicated to their cause must keep learning, because without knowledge there can be no victories. Dear friends, you are about to begin your service and take command of military units, divisions and formations during these challenging times. The current situation in the world is far from stable. Military confrontation in the Middle East continues unabated. The potential for conflict has risen significantly in a number of regions around the world, including in Eurasia. We see that if earlier NATO countries limited themselves to supporting the Kiev regime, which came to power through illegal armed means and a coup d'état, they are now openly saying in the West that they are preparing for war with us and are increasing their defense budgets. To justify this spending and the radical militarization of their states, NATO and European Union leaders continue, as before, to resort to false claims about an alleged military threat from Russia. The modus operandi of the so-called democratic West is very simple. First, they create threats against our country, forcing us to take the necessary measures for self-defense and protection, and then immediately accuse us of all mortal sins to justify their continued aggressive policy and actions against Russia. We know this all too well. Even after the treacherous attack on the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, and it was indeed treacherous, the West, Hitler's Germany, attempted to accuse the USSR and Stalin of aggression against what we would today call the collective West. Surprisingly, this is still being discussed in quasi-scientific circles. I would like to emphasize that Russia has consistently advocated for equal and indivisible security for all. 318, we are convinced that this can only be achieved by establishing a multipolar system of international relations and reliably ensuring the military security of every state. At the same time, we are prepared to respond promptly and appropriately to any external or internal threats. In accordance with the state armaments program, the nuclear triad is being systematically modernized. I would like to emphasize that, since the start of the special military operation, there have been significant advances in many types of weaponry. I will mention just one figure. Last year, more than 1,000 types of weapons and equipment were tested in combat conditions, including unmanned aerial vehicles with advanced guidance systems and loitering munitions. It is important to continue supporting our troops as they carry out this special military operation and to help strengthen security in Russia's liberated historic regions. I am confident that each and every one of you will do everything necessary to defend our homeland and ensure its prosperity.